Aloha, I'm Paul Norman, and I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Place at Puna. And since this is Christmas week, I wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And for those of you who don't celebrate Christmas, wish you a happy holidays in whatever way you celebrate the end of the year. And since it is Christmas week, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Christmas story. And, so if you're a Christian and you're a believer, or if you're not, I just want to warn everybody that this is going to be a secularized version of the story. And if that's not something that interests you, then Merry Christmas and please come back for the next video. So the thing that really strikes me about the Christmas story, right, is that, when we kind of pull away the theological and Christological components, which are super important, but when we pull them away and we actually look at the elements of the story itself, as a homeless provider, as a service provider that works directly with families, provides shelter to families, we would recognize this family. We might not recognize them as the Holy Family, right? But we would recognize this family, right? Because what do we have? We have Mary and Joseph. So Mary is very young. This is her first child. We know that young families tend to be the most economically disadvantaged, right? And then there are some questions about who the baby daddy is for the baby, right? Where there's some questions about why Mary's pregnant when supposedly Joseph and Mary have not had sex. We know that the family is probably low income, that Joseph is a laborer of some sort. And we also know that that they're living in a land, they're living under occupation, right? So their culture has been subsumed, so to speak, within the Roman culture. And they are probably, from a Roman perspective, as the dominant ruling class, are probably seen as second-class citizens, right? And we see that all the time here. And they have been, depending on the story you read, in Luke, they've been temporarily displaced through no fault of their own. And they're having to find temporary shelter, and probably, depending on, if we kind of look at history, they are, probably sheltering with friends, relatives, probably relatives, what we might call today, if there was a guest room, great, but we might consider that couch surfing, right? So, Joseph and Mary couch surfing. And then when the baby comes due, when it's time to give birth, Mary and Joseph and give birth in the area that they keep animals, right? So today we would say that this is, she gave birth in a place not fit for human habitation. The cultural context, historical context might have been a little different there. And that might have been normal or appropriate, or we don't know. But it all kind of points to the humbleness of this family, right? So Jesus later in his life, and super important, right? The Christ. But at this stage, they're nobody. I mean, really, as far as most people are concerned, they are nobody, just a poor family struggling to get by, pregnant, and that's it, right? And yet the birth of Jesus quickly becomes politicized, right? So you have the wise men, you have the foreigners who arrive bringing gifts, and basically because they've seen signs that this is an important event, And of course, as many, in political situations, usually it's the outsiders who have a better appreciation for what's going on because the people inside the country are too close, right? So that's why, in our own country, Dr. Martin Luther King gets the Nobel Peace Prize and can also be incarcerated, right? Right around the same time, right? So it goes from Nobel Peace Prize to being in jail, right? And this happens all over the world, right? It's not just us. And then also um, peasants or shepherds in the story come to offer praise to come witness this birth, and then of course the local ruler Herod basically wants to eliminate this problem, right, in a very real way. And this is very typical of what we see in our in our country today, in our society today. I mean, obviously, we don't do what Herod did and try and kill all the young children between a certain age, but as a country, we really don't want to look at our problems. We don't want to look at the problem of children being born into poverty, children being born into homelessness. That's just not something we want to look at. And there's a lot of political jockeying among the people with power to avoid talking about that conversation or put the blame somewhere else or whatever, to try and kind of hide the problem. And of course, there are people on the other spectrum who are trying to lift that up and, politicize that, right? It's a tricky issue. But, when it comes down to it, this family, this kind of family makeup, this is typical of what we see in our shelter, right? Younger families generally with young children who, for whatever reason, have lost their housing or have been displaced and need shelter and need help. And usually, the important thing to remember about like homelessness and particularly family homelessness is it almost never happens that someone goes straight from being housed in like an apartment to homeless. Usually they go from losing that apartment to staying with friends or staying with family to maybe staying in the car into the street, right? So it's a general step down. So again, when I see that, when I listen to and I think about and reflect on the Christmas story, the story of the Holy Family, you know, I see our families reflected there. That is a story of our families. And, in the same way that most of the society around the Holy Family, around the baby Jesus, didn't see the potential there, didn't see the value. It's the same with all the children we see in our shelter. Most people around don't see the potential in these children, right? So not to say that they're going to become, you know, they're not going to become, whatever, a Christ or something like that, but they have potential. There are children who will become the next, world leaders, who become the next geniuses, who have breakthroughs in science and medicine and so forth. And it's really hard to recognize that because our society has a lot of prejudice around poor children and, quite honestly, around poor children of color. So when I hear the story, I think about the families we work with, and but also I'm reminded that this is one of the reasons it's so important to respond to suffering and hardship, especially among the vulnerable, with compassion and with support and with resources, as opposed to judgment, which is, that's kind of our society's normal response: judgment. Why are they poor, right? And yes, we should ask why they're poor, but it's not necessarily only because of things they did. It's because of a bigger social context, right? So for me, I find the Jesus story inspiring. Um, and then, of course, it all now today it all exists in kind of a in the what's become the Christmas holiday season, which is the season of joy and the season of hope, the season of light. Um, and for many people that's a wonderful time, but for families living in shelter, it's a struggle, right? You're not in your home, with during a time when there's so much giving and gift giving and emphasis on buying stuff and giving stuff. It's easy for families who don't have to just have to constantly think about all the stuff that they don't have, that they're not able to do, that they're not able to um, get the gifts that their children want, right? They're not able to, prepare the meal that they want, whatever it is. They're not able to be with family because they're in shelter, whatever that is. Um, and so, when we come to Christmas, yes, we should celebrate it. We should take this time in the year to really appreciate, you know, um, the time with friends and family. We should take the time to be grateful for all that we have. And yet we should also, at the same time, out of that gratitude, out of that appreciation for all we have, is respond compassionately to those who need our help, who need our support, who maybe don't have enough. And so, of course, it's the end of the year, and Neighborhood Place of Puna, this is the time when we ask individuals like you to donate to Neighborhood Place of Puna, to support the families that we serve, to help make sure that we can continually grow our services so we can help more families with more resources, more support. So please consider giving a donation to Neighborhood Place of Puna. You can give a one-time donation. You can give you can make a recurring donation. We will not turn away super large donations, so please feel free to do that. And we won't turn away small donations. And if you'd like to give, please go to neighborhoodplaceofpuna.org and just click on the donate button. And I would like to just thank all of our supporters, all of the many, many, many individuals who have joined with Neighborhood Place of Puna over the year to help families, and in particular, who have joined with us in our commitment to end family homelessness in Hawaii County. We haven't gotten there yet, but we are making progress, and I really appreciate that commitment and support. I hope that everybody has a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, and a wonderful week. Aloha.